Sure, you know that Councillor Tiawan Gongloe often speaks to the media. Today he has called us again to maybe highlight something that So welcome, Councillor Gongloe, here as a media.
Ladies and gentlemen of the press, thank you for coming. I'm before you today, not just as a political leader, but as a citizen deeply concerned about good governance for the transformation of our country for the better. While we must acknowledge the efforts and accomplishments of the current administration under President Joseph N. Boakai, we cannot turn a blind eye to the missteps and glaring shortcomings that continue to hinder our nation's progress. Let me look at the positives. Let us start by recognizing the positive strides made by President Boakai's administration. The first positive step is the efforts being made to implement the recommendations of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, especially the establishment of the War and Economic Crimes Court. The second positive step that are being taken in group were the interventions on some major highways in the country during the first 3 months in power. Although because of the heavy rainfall in our country, the conditions of these roads are getting bad again. The efforts made in improving the environmental conditions of Liberia, the credibility of our passports, especially the diplomatic passports, the requirement of motorcyclists to wear helmets and to restrict the number of passengers, the revocation of illegal diplomatic passports, the auditing of government agencies, and publication of those audit reports are all positive steps. Government should be commended for its initial steps in clearing Monrovia and Pineville in the first 3 months, although the situation is declining again. President Boakai, in my view, scored a historical point recently when he increased the number of women on the Supreme Court bench. For the first time in the history of Liberia, there are 3 women justices on the Supreme Court bench. While all Liberians should recognize these laudable steps, there are some missteps that need to be pointed out at this early stage of our government in the interest of building a better Liberia. Failure to adhere to the rule of law. Governance by adherence to the rule of law is fundamental to the success of any democratically elected government. President Boakai's administration has demonstrated a troubling lack of respect for some laws made for the governance of Liberia. As said earlier, the Boakai administration failed to follow the law made by the legislature in 1973 for the formation of the government inclusion, Section 10.2 of the Executive Law of Liberia, and I've made this point on a number of occasions. This law has not been amended or repealed. We have witnessed the dismissals of government employees for mere criticism of the government on the social media. This is not good for our country. This undermines our constitutional right to freedom of speech and fosters an environment of fear. Yet, President Weah, in the first few months of his administration, repealed all the anti-speech laws, sedition, criminal libel against the president of Liberia, and criminal malevolence. Our laws on procurement and other statutes for the governance of our country should be followed without exception or excuse. For example, the recent violence at the CDC headquarters was based on an illegal search warrant. Because the search warrant was illegal, all the actions that were based on illegal search warrant were wrong. Therefore, government was wrong and should bear the full cost of the properties that were damaged and the treatment of those who were wounded. This government was governed according to laws of Liberia. The law is the law until it is amended, repealed, or until the Supreme Court says otherwise. Lack of seriousness in fighting corruption. Corruption continues to plague our country, and despite early promises of reform, the Buaka administration has not taken corruption seriously. High-level officials implicated in corrupt practices remain untouched, while the civil servants who struggle daily to make ends meet see no improvements in their wages or working conditions. The fight against corruption must begin with our leaders being held accountable. The people of Liberia, we have confidence in the government's seriousness about fighting corruption if it begins to hold its own officials accountable and not make excuses for them. I want to let the current government officials know that there is no secret in government. When you steal, the comptroller, the chief accountant, the procurement director will know. Even your driver and personal assistant and security officers will know. There is no secret in government. Government of inclusion. Let me re-emphasize Executive Law Section 10.2. President Buaka promised a government of inclusion, but instead, we have seen an administration that is deeply exclusionary. The government is failing to follow the long-established formula for inclusion, as mandated by Executive Law Section 10.2, enacted in 1973. The Executive Law Section 10.2 says, quote, as much as practicable, the President of Liberia shall appoint one cabinet minister from each of the counties of Liberia, unquote. It's clear. President Talbot followed this law when in 1975, he appointed Jackson Hebdo of Neighbor County as Minister of Education, Throw Paha of Grand Jeddah County as Minister of Post and Telecommunications, James Ward Barbier of Bon County as Minister of Defense, and Dr. Edward Bian Kesseley of Lofa County as Minister of Information. When Liberia had 9 counties. This law provides a blueprint for ensuring that all Liberians, irrespective of their political, ethnic affiliations, have a stake in the governance process. Sadly, this has not been the case under the Buaka administration. curtailing freedom of expression. We cannot ignore the dismissals of government employees for expressing their views on social media. This government must embrace criticism and opposition, not silence it. Freedom of expression is the bedrock of any democracy, and this administration's actions demonstrate a blatant disregard for this fundamental right. Failure to take a nationwide tour. Since assuming office, President Bouaka has not taken a comprehensive tour of the country to assess the state of development firsthand. How can we expect to craft a detailed and effective development roadmap without truly understanding the challenges that Liberians face in every corner of this nation? It is through such tours that past leaders have identified and addressed the needs of our people, from infrastructure to social services. Mismanagement of protests and use of the military. On matters of public protests, the administration has failed to follow established police protocols. There are standard operating procedures that dictate how the police should engage with protesters. First, the police patrol unit is supposed to intervene, followed by the police special unit, PSU, in cases of violence. Only when protesters are armed with lethal weapons should the emergency response unit or military be involved. The use of the military at the airport during the arrival of former President George Weah was unnecessary and set a dangerous precedent. The people who came to welcome him were unarmed and posed no threat. Failure to develop a friendly posture with former President George Weah. This is a missed opportunity for national unity and has been the failure of President Bouaka, because he was expected to build a relationship with former President Weah. In the aftermath of such a close and contentious election, it is vital that our leaders engage in dialogue and reconciliation to reduce political tension. By distancing himself from the former president, Bouaka is missing an opportunity to heal the divisions in our nation. The attempt by the Bouaka administration to disgrace and shame former President Weah is a serious misstep. To deny former President Weah the use of presidential VIP launch is an unnecessary attempt to introduce a superficial topic in our national discourse. Entering a presidential launch or even sitting in a presidential chair does not make one a president. Otherwise, the janitors that clean the president's office every day will be presidents. This reaction of the government is childish, to say the least. It is a sentimental issue that has no positive value in our collective effort to build a better Liberia. Nobody can succeed in taking the place that George Weah occupies in the history of Liberia. He was the first Liberian player to put Liberia on the football map of the world. He is loved by a large percentage of the people of Liberia. Yes, In my view, it was not advisable for him to enter politics. It misplaced him in Liberian history. But as a professional player, he understands the rule of any game, including the political game of election. Therefore, he graciously accepted defeat in the recent election, as he has always done. This is a good example for the young people and all Liberian politicians to follow. Nobody should support any effort by the Boubacar government to disrespect, disgrace, or shame President Biya in any way, form, shape, or manner. No effort should be made to make former President Biya uncomfortable in Liberia and to force him into exile. History has shown us that it is not good for our country. President Taylor's government did not end its 6 years because he made living in Liberia difficult for Roosevelt Johnson, a key player in the Liberian conflict. Similarly, Dr. Emerson Sawyer, Honorable Commander Wisse, Kofi Woods, Attorney Kofi Woods, Alhaji Kumar, George Bulley, and many other civic and political leaders were forced to go into exile. I am publicly advising President Boubacar to learn from our recent history. The Mara people of Nimbakande have a parable that even if you want to slaughter a cow, you still need to give it water to drink. Government can do its work, such as auditing, etc., but the president has a solemn responsibility to keep the nation united, reconciled, peaceful, calm, and to rally the support of everyone in his effort to move the country to progress and prosperity. Salary disparities in the of civil servants. There is a significant salary disparity between the higher ups in the three branches of government and our civil servants, particularly teachers, healthcare workers, and law enforcement officers. This administration has failed to address this issue, leaving many of our essential workers in financial distress. While there has been no increase in the budget for civil servants, the wage gaps between officials and civil servants remain wide and unjust. In fact, many civil servants voted for President Boubacar because they had a hope that he would reverse the harmonization of their salaries. They are now disappointed, totally disappointed. In order to stimulate public trust in his leadership on the issue of salary disparity, President Boubacar recently announced that he has reduced his salary by 40%. This sounded good. However, he did not tell us his take-home pay. Similarly, President George Weah told us that he reduced his salary by 25%, but he did not tell us his take-home pay. A percentage is meaningless unless the whole is known. A percentage is meaningless unless the whole number is known. By behaving similarly to President Weah on the salary issue, President Boubacar is engaging in business as usual. Failure to eliminate graduation fees. Graduation fees continue to burden our parents. Public schools, including the University of Liberia, are charging hundreds of dollars for graduation events. In many African countries such as Kenya, Ghana, and other countries, public schools do not charge these exorbitant fees. Why should Liberians be made to suffer in this way? I did not pay a graduation fee in both private and public schools, including the University of Liberia. Even President Bwaka did not pay a graduation fee at CWA and at the University of Liberia. This one day fee is imposing unnecessary hardship on parents, guardians, and sponsors of students in this period of extreme poverty in Liberia. Graduation fee is just for one day. I call upon the government to eliminate graduation fees in both government and private schools, neglecting Liberia's traditional allies. The Bwaka administration has failed to strengthen relationships with Liberia's traditional allies. Our relationship with the United States, Britain, Germany, and France has seen no substantial progress. These are nations that have stood by us during our toughest times, and their support is critical to our development. While we consider the importance of new and other viable relationships, we should not appear as a nation to neglect or downplay our historic relationships in any form, shape, or manner. Foreign trips and its financial implications. The unnecessary large delegations, such as the recent trip to China, only point to government's wasteful spending of scarce resources. It is difficult for me to understand why all the information actors, including the Information Minister, Press Secretary, and Director General of LBS, to go on in one trip. I also find it difficult to believe that it is true that the Minister of State for Presidential Affairs and Minister of State, and one of the Ministers of State without portfolio went on a trip to China. These are things that have not happened before in this country. It did not happen under the military rule, any of the transitional government, or Cllr, Johnson Saye, or Weah. What is going on? These are the kinds of situations that made Comrade Justin Wolokoli to give a speech in 1984 with the title, quote unquote, "Strange Things Are Happening." Investigation of mysterious deaths. There are mysterious deaths that happen that the people are still concerned about. I call upon the President to set up a special commission of inquiry, not just in the police, of retired police officers who were not connected to the investigations of those deaths. Government should offer incentives for information that may lead to the truth of these deaths, with a witness protection program for the informants. I am speaking about Harry Greaves, Allison, Princess Cooper, Yensua, and the other auditors, as well as Chalum Wusu and others. Security lapses. Government should avoid security lapses. I was very surprised to hear that during the recent violence that occurred at the CDC headquarters, that while the President was out of the country, the Vice President, the Minister of Justice, and the Police Inspector General were also out of the country. In the case of the Minister, he was attending a very important meeting of the Peace Building Commission of the United Nations that he could not miss. There is a need for coordination to avoid a repeat of this kind of situation. Conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, a better Liberia is possible with people-oriented policies and leadership. We need a leadership that is inclusive, that takes the rule of law seriously, that fights corruption with vigor, and that places the interests of the Liberian people above all else. As I've often said, government is a place to serve, not to steal. The Bwaka administration must take heed of these missteps just pointed out and correct them, or risk continuing down a path that further marginalizes the people of Liberia. As one of the political leaders that call on my supporters in Liberia and around the world to support the election of Mr. Joseph Nima Bwaka as president, I have a moral obligation to speak to him truthfully about his positive steps and missteps. I call upon fellow Liberians who supported Bwaka to tell him that what was wrong yesterday is still wrong today. We must not make excuses today for missteps. We must put the interests of the Liberian people above partisans or any other relational interest. I thank you very much.
That's good. Fellow colleagues of the media, you listen to Cllr Gongloe. It is now your turn to ask questions if you have any.
Yeah. Cllr Gongloe, thank you for the powerful press statement. You are one of the leading politicians in this country. Throughout your campaign as the 2023 General Presidential election, and throughout your campaign, you said you're going to end impunity and declare war on corruption. Recently, the government of Liberia suspended a senior governor for corruption and began a lead lawyer for him. Why? Is this a contradiction to your statement in the campaign?
Some of my supporters have raised that issue, and some are murmuring. I heard that people have been concerned about that case. Like Kamala Harris said, they have not changed my values. I remain committed to adhering to the rule of law. The laws that created the different position must be observed, respected, and defended by this government until those laws are amended or repealed. Those laws provide way for removing any appointed position, anybody appointed to those positions. And I am saying the government must do that. There should be no shortcut in law. Laws are not made for individual convenience or for quick solution. Without going to the details, since the matter is before the court, the law creating the central bank said the governor of the central bank can only be removed through impeachment. And I think the president was ill-advised, like he did in the case of LTA, when the Supreme Court said the creation of tenure position is consistent with the Constitution of Liberia. And now he was ill-advised to say, you know what, you can suspend, and it's different from dismissal. That's an attempt to circumvent the law. And that's what I'm fighting. There's nothing that stops the government from indicting people who committed crime, who they allege stole our money. I will be with them on that. I was Solicitor General when Senator Relakan was sitting, and we indicted him and prosecuted him. There's no law that says when you're in office you cannot be prosecuted.
Yeah.
Right? I see this as a misstep And that is why I'm defending the law, so that the government can do what is right. Until the law creating 10 positions is amended or repealed, that's the law.
Yeah.
Well, my name is Yasa Natasha Wrights from the Info Fargate newspaper. My concern have to do with the War and Economic Crimes Code, which of course the words of Roman that was even published in a paper by some of your mentee, I think your mentee as a whole, because I made a research that you mentor him and nurture him into this profession as a lawyer. Because in a journey to myself, what I derive is that he was like, like accusing you as the mastermind behind his removal as the chairman of the War Crimes Group. What do you have to say about
Okay, so Jonathan is a young brother who have no personal differences.
that?
And he's always respected and respected. It is not about him. The game is about procedure, processes, the laws, and precedents. To establish the TRC, it was the civil society, including the Bar Association, all that vetted people to be on the TRC. To establish the Independent Human Rights Commission, people were vetted again, the civil society, including the Bar and everyone. Simply because these transitional justice processes are meant to heal the country and require the total support, especially of the actors in the process. Jonathan came here. Before he came here, I spoke to the public, to the press, and said, President Barker moved wrongly. He should have consulted the bar and the civil society. And even if you wanted Jonathan massacre, there was a way to rally support for him. He needed the support of the actors in the civil society. He didn't do. When Jonathan massacre came here and said, you need to encourage the worker to actually call the bar and the civil society leaders on your issue. Because if you don't get support of the civil society and the bar, you go nowhere. These are the people that the victims look up to. The Bar Association and the civil society. And I'm maintaining that was not for him. If any other lawyer had been appointed in that manner, my position would have been the same.
So were you also talking about him meaning or about the president appointing these people from the bar as a lawyer with all consulting the bar?
It's not just about being lawyer, it could have been somebody else, not a lawyer yourself. Appointment of the executive director of the War Economic Crimes School without the required consultations will not yield the required result, because the intent is to have a process that the victims have confidence in and that will heal the country.
Yeah.
So we're not about him alone.
Yeah.
So it could have been anybody. And the bar president said publicly that he even wrote a letter to the president for audience. And the president did not acknowledge the letter and did not even call him. Yes, it's the president's prerogative to appoint. But the manner of doing it that will increase public trust and confidence in the process is what they are talking about.
Venus.
Council, let's talk about corruption a little bit. Recently, the LCC released a report of government officials who neglected to have declared their asset. Interestingly, among these people are high-ranking government officials from the legislative branch of government, the executive, and that of the judiciary. The LCC, in its recommendation to the president, said he has the option to suspend, to demote, and the list is endless. what do you have to say to the president as it relates to the LCC?
I advise you to muster the political will to implement the recommendations of the LCC. It's important in his first year in government so that people can predict positively about the future. He likes fire, but he himself said that the Christmas will be good, from the eve. Now we are in the morning of the Christmas. He has to hide now, so we know whether the Christmas will deal with end good. It's not just to say something, but actions are better. You must walk the talk and not just talk. So I encourage him. And many of those people may be his close friends and relatives. And are expecting that, so he should show to them that he's president of Liberia. And he laid more emphasis on his oath of office than relationships. That's why that's the example that President Tupper set in this country when he signed the death warrant for William Tupper. That position of president calls for tough decisions. And his popularity.
Like on the Senate pro tem, that have not declared her.
Yes! You need to follow the law. Nobody is above the law. And like I said before, when I turned to over to the special coach to the UN, the only man in this country, in this century, that has been perceived to be above the law in Liberia has been President Taylor, to the extent that he was now put under the ambit of the law. I don't see anybody. I don't see any man or woman in this country who will be above the law.
Bango.
All right, Council, you talk basically about our relationship with our traditional partners, in reference to America, Germany, and France. You say it seems that this government is downplaying those relationships.
Yes.
What would be your advice?
I'm advising our President Walker. In the first 5 months of my being in power, I will have spent all the money, all the resources required to lobby in Washington, D.C. as Liberian president to enter the White House and shake hands with President Joe Biden. It is so important for Liberia. That is just a reality. China can give us $5 billion now, cash. If you go in the street tomorrow, even after announcing that, and you ask 10 Liberians, between China and America, who do you prefer? 9 Liberians will say America. That's the reality. Which country in the history of the world that had its president leave office only because the president of the United States said, pack your bag and leave Liberia, I will not take no for an answer. I have no example in history. But that's the Liberian mindset when it comes to Liberia, to America. That's why one time in Washington, D.C., I said at the State Department, we blame you for the war. If you knew the influence that you had in Liberia, in January 1990, you would have said to Taylor, stop the war, Joe, stop the war, and war would not have done what it did in Liberia. But that's the American influence. And people who know history know that the first country to recognize our independence was Great Britain under Queen Victoria. Our first trading partner in this country was Germany. That's why you find the Germany, even as far as people all over the place. The old stores you find down one side were owned by German traders. It's in World War I that took them out of the country. But they are still our friends. And you saw our President Saye did. In her first second year, she invited Angela Merkel. And she came here. She came here because of the historic relationship that exists between Liberia and Germany. Let's keep our old friends before we can find new friends. We appreciate what the Chinese are doing for us, but America, Europe, are allies. And I think it was a bad foreign relation misstep to go to China before thinking about going to America. He should have left from Joshua. But President William made his first trip in the same September in 2018 to China. After that, did he get any invitation to Washington, D.C.? No. Nations behave like human beings. They are jealous. They compete. They don't want to be second place. So he has a major work to do with Washington, D.C.
So, Councillor Gongloe, please say, what kind of Liberia you really want to see?
I want a Liberia, as I've said, where the people's interest will be more. Secondary to everything. And you know, let me be a little bit superstitious. Because Botswana has shown a history of government that is more people-oriented and therefore is less corrupt in Africa. It's one of the countries, maybe the least corrupt country in Africa. God is blessing them every day. The little dam they had before they built very good highways, schools, clinics, they send their children to school abroad, they give them stipend, they've done every good thing for that country. See what God did for them these 5 days. God, the second largest dam in world history, was formed in Botswana. Because God knows that that money will be used for the people of Botswana. Having helped those who help themselves.
Thank you, Council. Let me ask you the last question before we go. The government keep reacting to you when you talk about, exclusion or inclusion. The last time when you said that the government is not actually involved with inclusion, the Minister of Information said that even the vast running mate was included from one country, and then you're still talking about exclusion. So you want to be specific which one of the countries in this country that don't have representative in the country. That's one. And the last one is the recent incident that occurred. You mentioned at the CDC airport. You are very definitive about shifting blame to the government. Don't you think that civil society organization and the media should be the one coming out with these kinds of outcomes? What do you think? Do you think you're going to be taken serious? These are my two concerns.
Well, let me start with that. Governance must be by rule of law. You must go and get search warrant from the proper court that has jurisdiction over the area you want to search. With the number of lawyers in the world, we've trained more than 700 lawyers in this country. The magistrate areas are divided. West Point Court has no jurisdiction in Komatang. It is the Monrovia City Court that has jurisdiction there. Then, the search warrant was now obtained from the magistrate. The magistrate school, it was obtained according to reports from assistant clerk of court. We did not have such a problem. Now, when you move on such an illegal instrument, everything that happens is wrong. And for this government that is supposed to be a mature government, that is a very, bad mistake that nobody expects this government to make. Now, you're talking about inclusion. The law is clear. Cabinet ministers, and I gave the examples of what Tupper did. At that time, there were 9 counties, and 5 of the counties were along the coast. Largely, they Elijah with the presence of powerful American Liberians. And so Johnson, Herring, or that don't names you have in government. And the lawmakers started in 1917 and said, these 4 countries that were created in 1964, they are producing a lot of educated governors of this country. Because the cabinet can drive the budget and divide the resources for inclusion. Now, the law says as much as practicable. For me, practicability means are there educated people and experienced people in that country? And I can tell you, every country in this country, including small countries like Rowan says, has more than 5 master's degree holders, some with PhDs. So every country, it is practicable to appoint cabinet ministers for each of the countries. Senator Amara College. President Walker to me, because he said that in 2 days during the second round, he raised over $400,000 US to support the campaign. He was inside, he was controlling the war room. He's not happy with the composition of government. He came out and said, 8 counties are without cabinet ministers. My former running mate is not a cabinet minister. He's the head of the agency. Cabinet ministers are different. They are the people who control the policy, who have the president to make policies. The head agencies, ministries. The ministries control agencies. So you see, for example, on the EPA, there are government ministries who are on the board, on the policy council, and all that. So there are countries that do not have cabinet ministers, and nobody, all my friends in the, nobody can say, but it didn't happen on our way. It didn't happen on our Ellen. It never happened until that is not an excuse. This government, in their own words, came to rescue us from everything, rescue us from not following the law, rescue us from not having a government that is inclusive. You know what I mean when everybody is working with his county, he's a minister, he don't want people to talk to put their people in the school, their hospital, their road bridge in the budget too. So
Thank you so much.
That is it. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you so much.
Also, get a hard copy of your